my first years at SRI, what I was learning that I just really have to be careful and not be trying to talk about all this wild future. I happened to be talking to an Air Force, a guy running part of an Air Force research lab, and I was talking to him about scaling, and I said, you know, electronic components are going to have the same thing in it, the scaling effect, that things change when you get size. And so he gave me a grant to make a study on scaling, and it was very important to me to learn about that. So it's like saying, if I want to talk to you guys about scaling, and I said, okay, suppose by some magic, this room, and everybody in it, and everything you could see suddenly got 10 times bigger in every dimension. Would you notice? See, and you know, I asked that at a conference in 1958, I think, or something, and it was the same kind of puzzled response. See, so anybody analytical would look over and say, well, that person could be 10 times taller, but they're 10 times farther away, and they'd subtend the same angle, and geez, I wouldn't notice any difference, would I? Okay, well, how much more do you weigh? Oh, well, let's see, 10 times 10 times 10, 1,000 times as much? Yeah, I'd weigh 1,000 times as much, wow. Well, how much stronger would you be? Jesus, 10,000 times stronger? No, your strength is proportional to cross-section area of your bones and muscles, so you'd be 100 times stronger. And suddenly you realize it's the same thing as if you were 1/10 your strength now at your current weight. See, you probably wouldn't be able to stand up or even sit up and walk. And so you'd be on the floor, and your bones and such would probably break, and nobody could come and help you. And you says, oh, geez, so everybody reflected. So scaling, really, different phenomena are affected by the volume or the area or the length, etc. And some of them just by one more than the others. So as you shift the scale, the phenomena shift the way they work. And you take a device, like even a mousetrap, that would work at one scale, and you try to just build a scale model of a 10th or 100th that size, and it just wouldn't work at all like you want to. And so the thing is, from that you realize that current devices at the time to build binary things depend upon phenomenal relationships. So as they get smaller and smaller, you'd find different phenomena that could be connected together with a relationship such that you could make a device out of it. Oh boy, so a smaller size, and the speed of everything will go up too that way. And you says, okay, that's pretty good. That just says, okay, I could tell that the world's going to have all of the computing power and memory that you'll ever want, you could consider today to have useful. So let's get busy figuring out what we do about it. So that's been driving me since that late 50s, like that time, like that. So it's still there, and it's nanotechnology is coming about with it. And so the other side of the thing is the scale of our problems and the scale of the challenge and trying to deal with them is getting more and more complex, and we're not very good at dealing with large-scale social, political, economic problems like this. The problems in the world. It's hey, I brought with me something to show you about the world's problems. That there's a publication put out every year called The State of the Future, 2001, 2002. It's by an organization that's been underfunded but really valiantly conducted in Washington under the United Nations University called the Millennium Project. And over the years, with interacting with people all over the world, serious people thinking about it, they've isolated 15 major challenges to humanity. And these things, and finding ways to measure, getting indexes on them, etc. And I wish I had, it's in my briefcase, wherever it is. But afterwards I can show you. But it really gives you a picture for that. And these are all things, it's like fresh water. Oh, the world is not we're running out of it in ways that's being used and being blocked, etc., like this. The organized crime is getting to be something that is such a big factor now. They've been listing corruption in government most all these years as something that really is there. And the government at every stage is saying, you know, it's getting more and more complex. The people don't realize enough and understand it enough in order to be able to counter, you know, corrupt ways in describing and guiding them, etc. like this. So on and on. So anyway, it's just, the world's full of them, but even the businesses that are running, the problems of how to run a good business. So there's a lot further here that I'm not getting into about saying these dynamic knowledge repositories, how they have to be concurrent, that the one your company would run just can't afford to be that much different from the one somebody else is running, because you still have to communicate and prove things. And the whole idea of structured, diagrammed argumentation, and where the business of links that will point to any object means I can build a diagram in which every node is connected by a link pointing out to the particular passage, no matter where. And then the scheme we've got for, hey, we'd be able to go and dynamically transform any given document of any kind or database into a standard sort of XML kind of thing that has the structural, the metadata kind of characteristics in it that let us go through it so quickly and move and observe and use it to structure these argumentations for us. So they're really, really explicit things we can do. So one of the biggest things is to kind of get the paradigms adapted so people says, oh yeah, and it doesn't offer a particular business opportunity right now or something, but it's extremely critical that almost in every major thing we're thinking about, including education or something, we really learn how to be a lot more effective collectively. And I'm sorry I didn't get to all the fun details down inside this. I got Gabby. So I really appreciate the chance, and this whole thing about accelerated change just plays right into this, because our opportunities are going up and our paradigms need to start shifting, and it's going to make the world more and more complex. So, peace. Can I just say goodbye?
Q&A? Yes? Okay. Let's open it up for a bit of Q&A.
Oh, thank you very much.
Doug, you talked about effective strategies for dealing with complexity, and I want to ask you what those are, but that would probably take us the rest of the afternoon. Maybe a better question is, where would we go to find them?
In all the part I didn't get to it here, it's saying, hey, it's so complex, nobody's got the answer. And every answer you could think of would be great, you plug it in, and it's going to start changing the rest of that whole augmentation collective environment. So the best thing you can do is to try to facilitate the evolution. And it's the co-evolution of all the elements in that capability infrastructure augmentation system. So the co-evolution got to be a dominant thing. And nobody's smart enough to understand the best configuration of all of those elements in your augmentation system to really get the effect you want. So he says, okay, that the best way to do is find an effective way to facilitate the evolution. And so out of that comes ideas about saying, oh, hey, the earlier we started getting paid attention to this dynamic knowledge repository, we could start using that to help us get the best picture we could of how to build better dynamic knowledge repositories and what kind of models of them are being built and used in the past, et cetera. Oh, so the better you got at doing that particular project, the better you're going to get at getting better at that. And so that's where I came up with the term bootstrapping decades ago, is saying, oh, you know, that's an important thing to focus on, the kind of capabilities to pursue that would improve the capabilities to pursue. And so then that has ways of turning into a strategy that says, if I've got this big a scale of challenge to do, there isn't any way it's going to be a one deal thing. So he says, okay, we want to set up this infrastructure that can facilitate the evolution. And a core part of that is improvement communities that are focused on improving certain capabilities in the world, capability to cope with diseases, capability of coping with global warming, et cetera. Well, okay, many of those are going to be very important approaches, so it'd be too bad if they all each approached it in a different sort of fundamental way. So how you can get central activities going that they're all participating in helping evolve ever better ways to build and use these dynamic knowledge repositories. And that would even include how do you get better at educating people to use it, or educating schools, or you know, the whole social, political, business, et cetera, world has to start evolving, and to do it in some way in which they've got enlightened perspectives, as much understanding as possible, would seem like humanity deserves it. And for each of the elements, it's got its own push. You know, the research community's got it, the military support's got it, National Science Foundation and its peer reviewers have got theirs. Business has a very strong one that they can argue about, and et cetera. But they're oriented in only one segment of our society's supportive evolution. So they have to start getting involved in the whole bigger picture. Geez, if every question, I guess.
We have time for one more.
If I take half an hour to answer it, is that?
You described your insights into, let's say, computer user interfaces that people at the time could not comprehend. And I'm wondering, is there anything you'd like to describe that you can see now that this audience, even though it's a future story-oriented audience, is not yet able to comprehend?
Geez, I don't want to insult them to their face. Well, how about the very edge of it, what I'm not sure I understand? Would that solve the well, I have what I call an open hyperdocument system that I gave that name to 20 years ago, as saying we have to find a coherent standard way for bundling up our knowledge into knowledge containers that have the properties that let us best sort of do the kind of studying, developing, integrating, assessing, et cetera, that we need to do. And so that's something that has to, I called it an open hyperdocument system, and that was some years before I learned about open source, which then I immediately says, yes, it has to be open source. Because the very terms about the objects that are in there, the knowledge objects, and the means of portraying them and manipulating them, et cetera, is got to be open, just like our natural language had to be open evolution. And even though there's specialty fields like algebra or chemistry or something of that, in which the vocabulary based upon the natural language, general natural language, would have its special terms and et cetera, that people move into there knew that they, oh yes, I don't know what you mean by this or that equipment, but I'll learn it pretty quickly. The concepts that oh, people don't have to look at something in order to do something with it. It's like you don't have any trouble telling your 6-year-old or something, hey, run upstairs to the bathroom, and there's a second drawer to the right, this side of the sink. You'll find my hairbrush. Would you bring it to me? Instead of having to go up there and point to some moron who's limited to pidgin English, it says, no, we do that. So that same kind of flexibility in our dealing with our logic form, our objects in our language and the way we portray them, etc. We've got to be free to evolve, and we have to get over some of those unfortunate paradigms which have limited that. And I just feel like people are, that we need to have in that open hyperdocument system, what we ought to provide for is different user interfaces could plug in. So, okay, you're a pedestrian in this world. Here you can have your simple one, but the same kind of objects that are in there, somebody that's expert can go and has an interface that may have very, very different physical interfaces to them that takes a long time to learn how to operate. But the skill level is great. So when I was early trying to object to people saying the easy to learn stuff, and they says, you just don't understand the world. That's just the way it is. And I said, oh, that's why everybody's still riding tricycles, huh? See, bicycle is quite difficult to learn. And